She called 911 17 times. She begged for help. Each time, the police said they couldn't do anything until they found her body buried near the river. Jasmine Harlow was a 28-year-old nurse, mother to a 6-year-old boy, and, until her tragic end, a woman fighting quietly for her life. People who knew her described her as warm, dependable, and always smiling. But what many didn't know was that Jasmine was also in a relationship that was slowly turning dangerous. She met Anthony "Tony" Bell at a charity fundraiser hosted by her hospital in June 2023. Tony was charismatic, a former military man turned local gym owner. He had a way of commanding attention in a room, and Jasmine, soft-spoken and private, was flattered. At first, things moved quickly. Too quickly, her sister Brianna would later recall. It was like 1 month she was talking about this new guy, and the next, he had keys to her apartment. He bought her son a bike. He started showing up everywhere. But beneath the charming surface, something darker was brewing. By December 2023, the red flags were impossible to ignore. Jasmine confided in a few close friends that Tony had started tracking her phone, showing up at her work unannounced, and accusing her of cheating if she didn't answer his calls immediately. Then came the bruises. On January 4, 2024, Jasmine made her first call to 911. "He's outside. He's yelling. I told him to leave but he won't go. Please, just send someone." Police arrived 22 minutes later. By then, Tony had left. Officers took a report and advised her to change her locks. No arrest was made. Over the next 5 weeks, Jasmine called the police 16 more times. Tony slashed her tires. He broke her front window. He screamed at her through the apartment door. Each time, he was gone before the police arrived. Officers marked the incidents as domestic disturbances. No charges were filed. Jasmine filed for a temporary restraining order on February 15th. It was denied. No immediate physical threat was present, the judge wrote. Brianna was furious. She was begging for help. What more did they want? A body? Jasmine started keeping her son with her mother at night. She was scared to sleep alone. She changed her work schedule to avoid driving home after dark. But Tony always found her. At the grocery store, the gas station, even at her son's elementary school. She documented everything. Screenshots of threatening texts, voicemails of Tony cursing and crying, all handed over to the police. Still, nothing. Her final 911 call came on April 17th at 9:03 p.m. He said, "If I don't talk to him tonight, he's going to hurt me." I believe him this time. The dispatcher logged it. Officers never followed up. Less than 48 hours later, Jasmine Harlow was gone. April 19th, 2024. A Friday that began like any other in Mobile, Alabama, but would end with questions that still haunt a city. Jasmine was scheduled for her usual 7 a.m. shift at Providence Hospital. But when roll call passed and her locker remained untouched, her friend and colleague Kyla Martinez knew something wasn't right. "Jazz is never late," Kyla later told reporters. "She always texts me if she's running behind." That day, nothing. Just silence. By 10 a.m., Kyla had left 3 voicemails. No response. She called Jasmine's sister Brianna. She didn't drop Aiden off at mom's this morning, Brianna realized. Something's wrong. At 12:17 p.m., the Mobile Police Department received a request for a wellness check at Jasmine's apartment on St. Stephen's Road. Officers knocked. No answer. The apartment was locked from the inside. Through a window, they saw her car parked in its usual spot. No signs of forced entry. No lights on. Neighbors hadn't seen her leave that morning. Her landlord let officers inside with a spare key. Everything appeared normal until they reached the bedroom. A lamp lay shattered on the floor. One side of the bedsheet was bunched awkwardly, stained faintly red. On the carpet, a broken earring and a long black hair extension, consistent with what Jasmine often wore. Her purse was still on the kitchen counter. Her wallet inside. But her phone was missing. Detective Sharon Briggs was assigned to lead the investigation. Within hours, crime scene technicians combed the apartment. Luminol revealed smeared blood near the bed frame and faint traces in the hallway leading to the front door. It was enough to escalate the case from a wellness check to a possible abduction. Brianna posted Jasmine's photo on social media, begging the public to help. "My sister is missing. She was scared. She begged for help. If you know anything, please speak up." Her post went viral in Alabama within 24 hours. Local news picked up the story. The hashtag Find Jasmine began trending. Later that evening, police pulled surveillance footage from the gas station across the street. At 2:13 a.m. on April 19th, a dark SUV was seen parked near Jasmine's apartment complex. A tall man in a hoodie stepped out, waited at the door for 2 minutes, and then entered using what appeared to be a key. The vehicle matched the description of Anthony Bell's black Ford Edge. Kyla told police she recognized the gate. "That's him. That's Tony." A bolo, be on the lookout, was issued for Anthony Bell, who had not responded to calls from investigators. The next day, Jasmine's phone pinged near a motel off I-10, 5 miles outside the city. Officers arrived too late. The room was empty, but what they found was chilling. Blood spatter on the sheets. Bleach bottles in the trash. A missing shower curtain. A partial palm print on the headboard. Room registration showed a fake name. But security footage confirmed what police feared. Tony had carried Jasmine, unconscious, into the room just before 3 a.m. He left alone at 6:47 a.m. The hunt was on. By the morning of April 21, 2024, the Mobile Police Department had officially classified Jasmine Harlow's case as a suspected abduction. Local media was saturated with coverage. Jasmine's photo was plastered across news websites, gas stations, and bus stops. Her brown eyes, high cheekbones, and soft smile had become a symbol of a city's collective anxiety. Detective Sharon Briggs, a 14-year veteran of Mobile PD's Violent Crimes Unit, was now running point. Briggs was known for her meticulous case files and no-nonsense demeanor. She immediately called in FBI assistance, citing potential interstate activity due to the motel's proximity to I-10, a known trafficking corridor. Anthony Bell was officially named a person of interest. "He's vanished," Briggs told reporters during a press conference. "We have reason to believe he is actively avoiding law enforcement and should be considered dangerous." The bolo for his vehicle, a 2017 black Ford Edge with tinted windows, was distributed across Alabama, Mississippi, and Georgia. But while investigators searched highways and checked surveillance feeds, it was a small but crucial mistake that would blow the case wide open. At 4:42 p.m. on April 21st, a sanitation worker reported a cracked black hoodie he'd found in a city dumpster just a block away from the motel where Jasmine's phone had last pinged. It had been stuffed under pizza boxes and plastic bags, almost missed. Inside the hoodie's pocket, Jasmine's driver's license and a prepaid motel key card. Briggs ordered an immediate sweep of the motel room once again, this time with a full forensic team. The blood found earlier was sent for rapid DNA testing. Results came back within 24 hours. The blood matched Jasmine. Crime scene photos taken on April 22 documented a large blood pool soaked through the mattress, drag marks on the laminate flooring, and remnants of bleach streaks near the bathroom tiles. A shower curtain had been ripped from the rings. Behind the toilet, tucked under a loose panel, officers found a receipt, a hardware store purchase from 3 days earlier. Zip ties. Industrial bleach. A tarp. The receipt was signed, T. Bell. Meanwhile, investigators obtained Tony's cell phone records through a subpoena. Though his phone had been turned off since April 19th, location data from the days prior painted a disturbing picture. On April 18th, just 1 day before Jasmine disappeared, Tony had driven to Dog River Park, an isolated stretch of forested land with limited surveillance. Records showed he remained in that area for approximately 46 minutes. It wasn't a fishing trip. Tony didn't fish. He didn't hike. But the park? It was quiet, easy to access, and notoriously under-patrolled. Detective Briggs ordered a search of the park, starting with areas near the riverbank. On April 24th, cadaver dogs were brought in. It didn't take long. One of the dogs, trained to detect decomposition scent, alerted near a patch of disturbed earth, partially obscured by pine needles and overgrowth. The smell was faint but undeniable. Officers began carefully excavating the site. Just 18 inches below the surface, wrapped in a plastic shower curtain and bound with zip ties, was a decomposing female body. The identification was immediate. A bracelet on the left wrist, engraved with Aiden's mommy. Jasmine Harlow had been found. Autopsy results released the following day confirmed the grim details. Blunt force trauma to the head, followed by strangulation. Ligature marks on her wrists and neck showed she had been restrained. Defensive wounds indicated a struggle. The time of death was estimated to be within a few hours of her last known sighting. Detective Briggs stood before reporters the following morning, voice trembling but composed. Jasmine did everything right. She called for help. She followed legal channels. She documented the abuse. She begged us to listen. And still, she ended up buried in the woods. The community was outraged. Vigils were held. Protesters gathered outside the courthouse demanding accountability. Brianna Harlow, holding a framed photo of her sister, called out city leadership. She wasn't just a victim. She was a mother, a daughter, a nurse who saved lives. And when it was her life on the line, no one showed up. That night, more than 500 people marched through downtown Mobile holding candles and signs reading, #JusticeForJasmine. The hunt for Anthony Bell intensified. Media outlets across the Southeast picked up the story. The FBI issued a federal warrant for unlawful flight to avoid prosecution. Meanwhile, Brianna began combing through Jasmine's old voicemails and text logs. She compiled a timeline of every police report, every 911 call. The evidence was damning, and it painted a clear picture. Jasmine had been failed at every turn. On April 27th, acting on a tip from a gas station clerk in Augusta, Georgia, FBI agents spotted Tony's vehicle parked outside a cheap roadside motel. He was taken into custody without incident. In his initial interrogation, Tony claimed he snapped after Jasmine blocked him out. She wouldn't talk to me. I just wanted to explain things. But she screamed. I panicked. His tone was cold, detached. He showed no signs of remorse. Anthony Bell was charged with first-degree murder, unlawful imprisonment, and obstruction of justice. The news rocked Mobile to its core. But for Jasmine's family, it was just the beginning of a long road toward justice. By April 28, 2024, the city of Mobile was mourning. The confirmation of Jasmine Harlow's death brought with it a tidal wave of grief, rage, and deep introspection. Her body had been found just 4 days earlier, wrapped in a plastic motel shower curtain, hidden in a shallow grave near Dog River Park, a place she'd once taken her son to feed ducks. Now it was a crime scene. The autopsy left little doubt about the brutality of her final hours. Jasmine suffered blunt force trauma to the left side of her skull, likely from a heavy object. There were signs of manual strangulation, and ligature marks along her wrists and ankles suggested she had been restrained. Her fingernails were broken, evidence of a desperate struggle. Forensic pathologist Dr. Emilia Soto stated in her report, the victim exhibited multiple signs of defensive wounds and endured sustained physical trauma prior to death. The manner of death is homicide. Inside the body bag was a small gold bracelet Jasmine never took off, engraved with her son's name, Aiden. The murder weapon was never recovered, but detectives believed it was a heavy blunt object, possibly a wrench or bat, based on the indentation and surrounding fractures in the skull. Investigators also confirmed that the plastic shower curtain matched the exact make and model of those used at the Pine Creek Motel, where Tony Bell had been seen carrying Jasmine inside and then leaving alone. The Mobile Police Department held a press conference the same day the autopsy report was finalized. Detective Sharon Briggs, visibly exhausted but composed, took the podium. Jasmine Harlow trusted the system. She followed the law, asked for help, and was ignored. Her death was preventable. Community backlash was immediate. Hundreds flooded City Hall demanding accountability from both law enforcement and the local court system. Why was her protective order denied? Why weren't police more aggressive after 17 emergency calls? Why had it taken her death to finally treat her case as urgent? City Councilwoman Denise Logan issued a statement. "This is not just a tragedy. It's a failure, a systemic one, and Jasmine paid the price." Meanwhile, Anthony Bell sat in solitary confinement at the Mobile County Metro Jail, awaiting trial. Prosecutors moved swiftly, filing formal charges: first-degree murder, kidnapping, unlawful imprisonment, and abuse of a corpse. Lead prosecutor, Assistant District Attorney Marcus Keller, was determined to ensure a conviction. The evidence is overwhelming. Surveillance footage, motel records, digital footprints, forensic evidence, it all points to a calculated act of violence. This was not a crime of passion. This was premeditated. During arraignment, Anthony Bell pled not guilty. Outside the courtroom, Brianna Harlow stood before a crowd of reporters, holding a framed picture of Jasmine and her son. She called. She cried. She screamed. Nobody listened. Now she's silent forever. But we won't be. The district attorney's office revealed that Jasmine had been keeping a digital journal on her private Google Drive, entries documenting fear, escalating threats, and her mounting frustration with the justice system. One entry dated just a week before her disappearance read, "If something happens to me, it'll be Tony. And if the police say it was anything else, they're lying. I've done everything I'm supposed to do. They just won't hear me." The journal was admissible in court. It became one of the most damning pieces of evidence. Meanwhile, Jasmine's funeral was held on May 2, 2024, at Mount Olive Baptist Church. Over 600 people attended, many of them strangers moved by her story. Nurses from Providence Hospital wore purple ribbons, the colors symbolizing domestic violence awareness. Aiden, Jasmine's son, sat in the front row with his grandmother. Too young to understand the full weight of the ceremony, he clutched the same teddy bear his mother had given him on his 4th birthday. The service ended with a reading from Jasmine's sister. "She was light in dark places. And though someone tried to bury her, we will make sure her story rises higher than ever." After the funeral, a new wave of momentum began to build. Activists and advocacy groups began rallying around the hashtag Justice for Jasmine, demanding reforms in how police departments handle repeated domestic violence reports. Detective Briggs personally delivered Jasmine's belongings to her family: her journal, her necklace, and the blood-stained bracelet recovered from the burial site. Brianna recalled, "That bracelet, it felt like a piece of her, like she was still fighting even in the end." As Jasmine was laid to rest, the story was no longer just about a murder. It became a movement. The cracks in the system had been exposed, and the pressure to fix them was only beginning. By the summer of 2024, the case of Jasmine Harlow versus Anthony Bell had become one of the most closely watched trials in Alabama's recent history. Not only because of the shocking brutality of the crime, but because of what it represented: a system's failure to protect a woman who did everything right. Jury selection began on July 8, 2024, under heightened security at the Mobile County Courthouse. Protesters gathered daily, demanding justice for Jasmine. The courtroom was packed, not only with media but with survivors of domestic abuse who saw Jasmine in themselves. Assistant District Attorney Marcus Keller opened the trial with a quiet but devastating line. "She called 17 times. Not once, not twice, 17. And still, she died alone." He laid out the evidence: Jasmine's 911 call history, security footage of Tony carrying her into the Pine Creek Motel, the plastic curtain found with her body, and damning forensic data from the crime scene. But the most haunting testimony came from Jasmine herself, through her journal. "If something happens to me, it'll be Tony." The jury sat in silence as Jasmine's sister Brianna read excerpts aloud. Jasmine had detailed specific threats, moments of fear, and dreams of escape. Her words were raw, heartbreaking, and prophetic. Tony Bell's defense team attempted to paint a different picture. They argued that Jasmine's death was the result of a sudden, emotional breakdown, that Tony had snapped in the heat of the moment after Jasmine ended their relationship. They called it manslaughter in a moment of grief. But the prosecution dismantled that claim. Tony had purchased bleach, zip ties, and a tarp days before Jasmine's disappearance. He had searched online, how long does it take for a body to decompose in the woods, and how to erase GPS history. They presented a Google search from April 17th, 2 days before the murder, typed on Tony's laptop. How to strangle someone without leaving bruises. Detective Sharon Briggs took the stand, laying out a timeline with chilling precision. Jasmine had likely died in the motel room within hours of being abducted. Cell tower data placed Tony near Dog River Park within 5 hours of that. Forensic analyst Rachel Kim described the blood patterns and drag marks in the motel. She concluded with, "There is no doubt in my professional opinion that the room was cleaned in an attempt to conceal a violent crime." The most damning witness was an unexpected one, Tony's former roommate, Jacob Ellis. Called by the prosecution, Jacob testified that Tony had a history of violent behavior toward exes, though no charges had ever stuck. He once told me, "If a girl ever did me dirty, I'd make sure she couldn't do it again." At the time I thought he was just venting. Now I know better. Throughout the trial, Tony remained stoic. No tears. No outbursts. Just cold silence. On August 2nd, closing arguments were delivered. Keller reminded the jury of one final quote from Jasmine's journal. "I'm not crazy. I'm not overreacting. I'm scared. And no one believes me." The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they returned, the verdict was unanimous, guilty on all counts. As the words were read, Jasmine's mother collapsed into tears. Aiden, now 7, was not present. He had been kept away from the media storm. At sentencing, the judge did not hold back. "Mr. Bell, what you did was not only inhumane, it was cowardly. You silenced a woman who did everything society asks of victims. For that, you will spend the rest of your life behind bars." Anthony Bell was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He showed no reaction. Outside the courtroom, Brianna addressed a sea of microphones and flashing cameras. "Today we got justice. But it shouldn't have taken a grave to get it. Jasmine's voice should have been enough when she was alive." The case prompted immediate scrutiny of Mobile's domestic violence policies. 3 officers were put on administrative leave pending an internal investigation into Jasmine's repeated calls for help. The judge who denied her restraining order was publicly criticized but remained on the bench. Community pressure intensified. Activists demanded systemic reform. The DA's office released a statement pledging to review all denied protective orders from the past 5 years. A task force on domestic violence reform was assembled by the mayor. And Jasmine's name? It became synonymous with change. A mural of her face now graces the wall of the local community center. Flowers are still left there each week. Under her painted smile are the words. She warned them. We listened. In the weeks following the trial, Mobile, Alabama found itself at the center of a national reckoning. Jasmine Harlow's death wasn't just mourned, it sparked reform. The newly created Jasmine Act was introduced into the Alabama state legislature in early September 2024. Backed by a coalition of lawmakers and domestic violence prevention organizations, the bill sought to close dangerous loopholes in the state's protective order system. The act proposed emergency temporary restraining orders issued immediately upon credible threat, mandatory police follow-up within 24 hours of repeated domestic complaints, and enhanced digital reporting mechanisms to document stalking and harassment. The bill passed the Alabama House by an overwhelming majority, then sailed through the Senate. Governor Elijah Walker signed it into law on October 5, 2024, flanked by Brianna Harlow and representatives from Safe Haven South, a local domestic violence shelter. The moment was broadcast live across Alabama. Jasmine's voice was silenced, but her story will keep screaming until every woman in danger is heard, Brianna said through tears. Meanwhile, the Carter Harlow Foundation, named after Jasmine's son Aiden and her maiden name, was founded with the mission of helping domestic abuse survivors rebuild their lives. It offered emergency housing, therapy, legal advocacy, and relocation grants. Donations flooded in, with over $1.2 million raised in just 3 months. Aiden, now under the care of his grandmother and aunt, was slowly learning to move forward. He received grief counseling and started school again in a different district under a new name for privacy. Family sources shared that Aiden still asked for his mother every night, often clutching her old scarf when he went to sleep. "He knows something bad happened," Brianna said in a televised interview. "But he also knows his mommy was a hero." Across the country, Jasmine's story sparked wider discussions about how the justice system handles domestic abuse, especially in cases without visible bruises or broken bones. News segments ran national features titled, "Why Jasmine Wasn't Protected," and "The 17 Warnings Ignored." Police departments in nearby cities began internal reviews. Some, like Birmingham and Montgomery, implemented new protocols, pairing domestic violence victims with crisis advocates and assigning priority status to repeat call-ins. In December 2024, Lifetime released a docuseries titled, "She Warned Them: The Jasmine Harlow Case," featuring interviews with Jasmine's family, investigators, and legal experts. The final episode ended with Jasmine's own voice, pulled from a saved voicemail to her sister. "I just want to feel safe again. That's all. To breathe and not worry if today's the day he finally snaps." Viewers wept. Hashtags surged. Petitions circulated. Jasmine's story refused to fade. 1 year after her death, on April 19, 2025, a candlelight memorial was held in Mobile's Civic Center Park. Thousands showed up, some local, some traveling from across the country. Survivors stood on stage, one by one, sharing their stories of fear, escape, and healing. Each one lit a candle in Jasmine's name. Aiden released a white balloon into the sky with the words, "I love you, Mommy. I miss you." As the ceremony ended, Detective Sharon Briggs approached the microphone. "We failed Jasmine, but she taught us all how to listen. Her life and her death changed everything." And so, while Jasmine Harlow never got to see her son grow up, her courage continues to protect countless others. Her legacy is etched not only into law, but into the hearts of every person who heard her cry and chose not to ignore it. If this story moved you, please consider subscribing, sharing, and leaving a comment below. Were there moments that shocked you, made you angry, brought you to tears? We want to hear your voice, just like Jasmine deserved to be heard.